Thanks so much. I'd like to thank, actually, the organizers for inviting me here. It's very nice to see some old friends that I've had. Naresh reminds me that we first met 20 years ago and worked together 20 years ago, which just makes me feel awfully old, actually. But some other wonderful folks from my community of Mississauga, Brampton South, thank you very much for coming up here and for sharing the story. As a woman, I'm grateful to live in a country like Canada that respects the rights of women and honors our achievements and capabilities. If it weren't for our nation's strength on issues of equality and our government's dedication to democracy and the well-being of our citizens, I can't imagine that I would be standing where I am today. Sadly, the unwavering protection of human rights we find in Canada is not perpetuated throughout the rest of the world's countries. We Canadian women might take the freedoms we enjoy every day, from being allowed to wear what we want, to demanding equal pay for equal work, for granted. And sadly, it takes international events all too often to remind us of how fortunate we are here in Canada. After reviewing the final report of Sri Lanka's Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honourable John Baird, who I've also had the good fortune of knowing for some 20-some-odd years, called on the government of Sri Lanka to address Canada's concerns regarding the accusations of human rights violations, and for the government to work to demonstrate the principles of freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Canada remains worried that the United Nations Secretary-General's panel of experts on accountability in Sri Lanka's allegations have not been addressed in the report. This panel raises concerns that international humanitarian law and human rights were violated by both sides during the conflict in the country. And as Canadians, we hope there are improvements to be made in the near future. We as Canadians, and particularly as Canadian women, call on Sri Lanka to respect the basic rights and respect that rights must be shared equally among people, regardless of gender or race. That equality will lead to a stronger nation, and that if women and men are to reach their full potential, they need to be free. I strongly believe that the role of women in democracies helps shape our societies to be more prosperous, more peaceful, and more harmonious. As mothers, we dream for our children, and it is next to impossible to not take a long-term view for their future and in developing public policy. I'd like to use as an example how our great country has been able to play a significant role in the rights of women abroad. Of course, in 2001, young Afghan girls were unable to attend school. Today, although they continue to endure the risk of injury or death, over 2 million Afghan girls attend school, and 30% of their instructors are women. Through Canada's role as a NATO ally and working with the Afghan society, these girls now have a future. Our Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, has outlined a bolder and stronger foreign policy for Canada, declaring that Canada will no longer go along just to get along. It's with our help and the help of other nations that I hope one day that all people in Sri Lanka will have the same rights and freedoms that I and all Canadians enjoy. Thank you.